Hi there, welcome to the session. This is the Grad Open House printmaking session. We're just going to wait for everybody to sign on. We're having just some connective issues. We're just waiting for the faculty member to sign on, so it's just going to be a moment. So thank you for your patience. I see lots of familiar names. Again, thank you for participating in so many events today. I hope you've been enjoying them all. Every session will be recorded. We'll be posting them to the website soon. Now that you've registered for an event, you're signed up, and you'll receive all of our emails moving forward. So once the archived videos are up, you can expect a video from us so you can watch them again. Thank you. If you're just joining us, we're just waiting for the faculty member to sign on. We'll be on momentarily. This is the printmaking session, and we're just waiting for the faculty member, Andrew Rafferty, to sign on. He's the graduate program director. Oh, someone so kindly put that they're in Southern California, so it's earlier there. Oh, it's a shame. It's a rainy day there. Today was unseasonably warm in New England. I think it hit like 75 degrees. It's been in the 70s all weekend. So this is quite the treat for us. So if you're considering RISD and coming to Providence, you can expect all different types of weather days. Hi there.
Hello.
We're here.
Hey.
Slight technical difficulty, but we made it. Thanks, Jen. Oh, wait, where'd he go? I might get a phone call in a minute.
You jinxed it, Molly.
I know, I jinxed it. What happened? He's either going to come back on or he's going to call me. We'll figure it out. Either way, welcome everybody. Thank you guys for coming. As we get started here and we wait for Andrew to get back online, I want you to feel free to start typing your questions in the Q&A tab, because after he gives you an overview, we really want to dive into answering your questions. I know some of you guys are undecided about what program you want to apply for. So we will be right with you. 1 second.
Perfect. As Molly said, feel free to start typing your questions in the Q&A section. That helps us answer as many questions as we possibly can during the Q&A. Oh, I see them. I think they're here. Yes. We're back on.
Okay, we're back for real.
Perfect.
Andrew, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
All right, so let's just start with some brief introductions. My name is Molly, Associate Director for Graduate Recruitment. You guys have been seeing me all over this place. We've been talking probably for a little while now via email and the other information programs that we've been doing. With me, my coworker, Jen.
Hi, Jen Ferrier.
And of course, we have Graduate Program Director and Printmaking Professor Andrew Raftery. Would you please introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm much better at the printing press and in the engraving pad than I am at computers. So I'm Andrew Raftery. I'm Graduate Program Director for Printmaking. And I'm just here to talk to you a little bit about our program. And so Molly, should I just go ahead?
Yeah, we'll have you do your thing, talk about the program, and we've already told the audience to start queuing up their questions. We also would love for you guys to raise your hand and we'll call on you and you can ask your question out loud to us. Feels a little bit more personal than in a webinar like this, and then we can do that. But yeah, why don't you go ahead and take it away. Jen and I are gonna hide our screens for now and we'll come back up when Q&A starts.
Good. So I just wanted to start and talk a little bit about the kind of core values of the printmaking program. And one thing I would have to say is that we're a place that unequivocally believe that prints have an important role to play in contemporary art and in the art of the future. And that really as artists, there's a real reason to study printmaking as a separate graduate degree. And I think part of the climate that we create is one where we have printmaking as the core of our discourse. All of our students really care about it. But I also think we have an environment where we can look at printmaking critically and where we can really ask ourselves about the necessity of this as an art form for the future. And we can really propose new ways to look at printmaking and to think about how to bring it forward. So it's a really strong community, and it's this community that has really values based on ideas of collaboration and sharing and helping others. And those things I think are really part of what really informs what we do. I just wanted to talk about a few things this evening. I'll talk a little bit first about the curriculum, and then I'll show you a little bit about some student work, and then show you the facilities, and then just tell you a little bit about my own perception of the admissions process. One of the things about RISD, and certainly about RISD printmaking, has to do with the curriculum. And I would say that when I think about what we do all year long, it's our Mondays that are kind of the core of our program. And so that's when we meet for our 6-credit graduate printmaking class. And that's where our students do their studio work in their studios, meet with the resident faculty, meet with visiting artists. We have our critiques and group discussions. And we also have seminars. And we do our museum visits and various types of research things and readings. And it's a place where students are really expected to develop independent work in a very kind of, I think, critical but challenging and nurturing environment. But one thing that I think is really important to remember is that when you come to RISD, you definitely take a lot of courses. And so many graduate programs, I would say, are a little bit like think tanks, where perhaps you'll do your studio class and then maybe you'll take a seminar. Our first year students come in, they take the 6-credit Monday course, and then they take 3 other classes. And their TAs. And so it's a kind of experience that's very, I think, rich, and this curriculum is very strong. And one of the things that we're really committed to is that each student who comes here makes a personal version of that curriculum. So that from the day one, as your advisor, I meet with you to really understand your goals and to think about what you want to do for the future, but also to think about the kinds of courses that you may want to take. And so when I show you some student work, you'll really see that even though the core of our discourse is printmaking, our students relate so much to many areas at RISD, such as textiles, ceramics, glass, digital plus media, graphic design, and really kind of are using those experiences to build a larger body of work, but also to really challenge the ideas of what printmaking is. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have some images I'd like to show you. And I didn't do a super fancy talk. What I did was I went on Friday, I went to the grad thesis exhibition, and I looked around and thought about the people who graduated last year, and just really was very excited to once again observe the great variety of work that they do and the different kinds of practices that were embodied in their work. And I also have to say that, we shut down in March, and I was really once again struck by the kind of resiliency of the students too, and how they really created all this new work during COVID. And we've been back in person since then. And so we also will see some work from that time. So the first thing I'm showing you is a crit that we had right before we closed down. The artist is Heather McMorty, and she did a lot of work while she was here with environmental scientists at University of Rhode Island and Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, looking at salt marshes in Rhode Island. And she studied science at Penn, but then she went to the Pennsylvania Academy of Art for an art degree. And she had an internship at the Fabric Workshop. So she was very involved with printing and textiles and surface design. And so here this shows an installation where she screen printed these patterns on these cushions to kind of bring the experience of the salt marsh into the gallery. And while we were shut down, Heather worked a great deal on certain artist books that also embodied these ideas. And she learned a great deal from her own observations and researches, but she also worked well with scientists, and I think helped them to sort of see information in new ways. And she was also the TA for the book arts class at Brown. So she was able to use their facilities as well. And so this is a book she did about mapping the salt marsh, and this is the back. But the part of her work that I was most excited about are these prints. And what they are is etchings, and she printed from both sides of the plate. And they were made with steel plates, and this side was covered with the ground, and she actually scratched into the ground the etched lines of a plant that grows in the salt marsh. And the other side was just the blank back. And she placed these plates into the salt marsh, and it was actually the salt marsh that did the etching. And I think this is really a very impressive way of an artist to engage with science. Something that's very direct, that's actually using the subject of the research to make the art. But I also think it's a way that Heather was able to use her love of drawing and her interest in science in the same project, because the drawing is so beautiful. And for me, they really engage very much in the origins of etching. Etching was first done on iron, and people really didn't know quite how to bite into the plate. And so this very experimental approach, I think, really brought her concept and her art together. Another artist who graduated last year is Lindy Shee. And Lindy had been at University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she got a BS in mathematics and a BFA in printmaking at the same time. And she came with tremendous skills in printmaking. And while she was here, she worked a great deal with papermaking and artist books. And this is actually her thesis book. So I have a few images of it. You can see here's the slipcase. And she did this entire body of work while in quarantine. And it's actually, the text is actually about narrative art and a kind of theory of narrative art that she developed. And you can see she opens it up and there's this little figure inside. The figure is crocheted and dipped in paper pulp. And the figure is holding a ball. And that ball has the entire text of her thesis hand stamped one letter at a time onto this giant, this incredibly long piece of gampi that she made herself right before we shut down. And I think that is an incredibly unique thesis, but also it engages with her ideas about not just printmaking and book arts and paper making, but even performance. And having her show these things is really quite a remarkable experience. She also made these objects, these crocheted objects during that time out of the gambi that she had produced. And what they are is, once again, very long strips of paper, and she cut out linoleum blocks and printed text on them. And she printed the text in Chinese, and so it really is a kind of a book with the same text printed again and again. And so this is a crocheted ear loop mask, and on the mask in Chinese, she's imprinted, "I'm so terrified." She did also the bra and panties in the same method. And so the bra at the top actually shows the Chinese word for big. And then the panties in Chinese have the phrase, "I have to go to the bathroom." Her work is also, very funny, but also very appropriate for the moment. And I think she really kind of captured something about this particular time that we've been living through. This piece is by Merrick Adams. And it's a mixed media print. It's really quite big. The figure's life size. And it has screen printing, woodcut, etching. It uses some found material. And for Merrick, it's really his tribute to Goya's "The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters," that famous print. And for Merrick, it was really a way of exploring his identity as a white man from the South, and kind of waking up from this nightmare and confronting aspects of his heritage that might be very uncomfortable. And he wrote his thesis as a book of letters to various artists that he admired, such as David Wojnarowicz, Goya, William Blake, and Kara Walker. This body of work is by Yini Luo. And I think it really shows how an artist at RISD in printmaking can really link up to other areas. So Yini came to us from the Central Academy in Beijing with very high mastery of printmaking, but she really wanted to learn glass. And so she spent her whole first year learning glass casting, which is an unbelievably arduous technique. But she took it on, and then she worked with the glass faculty during her second semester. And she developed this way of making her copper plates by having a shaped plate, putting plant material on it, and then putting hot glass onto that. And that's what actually creates this image on the plate. And she printed them in different ways. So she printed them in black intaglio with the silver surface roll, and in silver intaglio with the black surface roll. But she also continued to explore glass casting, and here are her rocks. So she selected these rocks, and I think that, and cast them in glass. And I think it's a really beautiful and open-ended and very poetic meditation on nature, but also on the very properties of the materials that she used. This is a print by Lila Sekli. She's originally from Transylvania, which is part of Hungary. And she started to work with wood engraving and some very kind of small images that would really sort of capture this place that she could never go back to as an immigrant, as somebody who's here on an unsure type of status. And so these images, these tiny images, really represented a kind of longing for her. And she's somebody who really also, during her time here, created a great many collaborations. So she helped people write proposals for various conferences. And this wood engraving was done at with a group of 5 other students who worked on a independent study together with me to learn wood engraving. So, somebody who really used her time here to make certain things happen. And she also worked well in glass and ceramics too. This is a piece by Philip Tonggi Kian, and Phil came to us from Macalester College, and he was an art history major with a great deal of interest in art theory. A very different profile from our program, which tends to be quite maker-oriented. But while he was here, he really did do a great deal of making. And so this is his final piece, which is actually this rawhide, which every week he would move the rawhide a little bit. And as he moved it, he would show how the color had changed. It was white at first, and became brown with more sun exposure. So it's really a piece about duration and time, and also about how the sun does the printing. But you can see also here, he puts certain information about the timing and the coordinates as he moved the skins. Now, Phil was somebody who was very interested in seminars and theory, and in putting together his own program here, he actually didn't take studio classes. He took all seminars at RISD and Brown, and he worked at the RISD Museum for 2 years. And so now he's actually teaching at Bard. I think he found this kind of balance between making and theory to be very helpful for him. This is Mackenzie Trotta, and Mackenzie was primarily a screen printer, but very much involved with the idea of objects. So the screen printed flame images in the background are on boards, and the foreground shows these steps that she made, and she screen printed them with the image of a ladder. So she was an artist who was extremely involved in images, but also kind of involved in these sort of contradictions. So the ladder and the steps, the flame image that we barely understand as a flame image, but it also seems to want to consume the work that it's made, that makes it up. I have a couple of pieces by artists who are currently enrolled, and this is by Mariana Ramos Ortiz. So she studied at the University of San Juan in Puerto Rico, and she's been very involved in really researching and exposing issues of colonialism in the Caribbean. And so she used laser cutting to make these flip-flops that create these impressions on the sand. But a great deal of her work has been with digital media and online types of artworks. And she's worked a lot with the Digital Plus Media program. And this is a piece by a first-year student named Wei Wang, who just came here from California with a graphic design background in many ways, but also working in not-for-profits and type of gallery spaces. Somebody who's very kind of interacted, and this piece is a screen print installation called Sold Hold. And he very much came out of a graphic design background and really brings that to bear on these art pieces. And he's really here reflecting on the kind of issues. It's an institutional critique of really our studio system at RISD and how we have these studios that we hold for a while. And there's the whole issue of the value of the education and that kind of thing. So I'm really excited to see where his work goes. So I'd like to just sort of move into showing you a little bit about the facilities. If you were able to come here, I would take you on a nice tour. But I went around with my camera yesterday and took these photos of our buildings and shops. And I think I can start by saying that Providence is a really beautiful town. And I think on a fall day like today or yesterday, it's absolutely exquisite. And RISD has, I think, 65 buildings, and most of them are old and they've been reused. So almost anywhere you go, you're in a very kind of interesting, repurposed space that's been created with a kind of incredible sense of design. So this is Benson Hall, which used to be the College of Pharmacy in Rhode Island. And it is a building that has our main shops, and each floor has a separate technique. So this is the litho studio, and we have 6 big litho presses in really great condition, and a fine collection of stones that we've been putting together for a long time and maintaining. Litho has become increasingly popular over the years, and we find that we offer usually 4 litho classes a year, if not 5. And I find my students just more and more drawn to the stones and to really that kind of sense of lithography and the kind of reusability of the stones. I think it's very appealing to artists of our time. The second floor is the Intaglio studio. And so there are 3 etching presses in this studio. And it's really, I think, our busiest shop. We can have 5 classes a semester in Intaglio. And I think one thing, if you visited RISD, you'd find that the shops are really busy and very active at all times. And here's the etching area. We etch with nitric acid on zinc and ferric chloride on copper. Our hot plates and our aquatint box. So I think it's, as far as Intaglio is concerned, it's a place where you can really do just about anything that you need to do. And the top floor is screen printing. And so screen printing has, I think, 8 of these vacuum tables, a big table for printing yardage and textiles, and that really large one-arm printer. So screen printing is really the opportunity to work large, to scale up, to work quickly, to work with color, to work with photo, those types of things. And all of our first year students take a screen printing course with Henry Ferreira the first semester, along with the first year painters. Here's our exposure unit. So we use that for all sorts of plate making. It can go really quite big, and a new arc from other thing for plate making. On the first floor, we also have our tech lab. So we have the printer for doing large scale transparencies and a laser cutter. There's plenty of tech labs on campus, but I think it's important for us to have some of these things in-house. Right across the street in a building called Memorial Hall, we have a letterpress studio. And that class is taught by Dan Wood, who also has a business in Providence. And so we have this nice Vandercook, and Dan's always kind of collecting type for us and working on maintaining that kind of thing. But also our students do often work with Dan in his shop, either as interns or to doing private projects. And we just refurbished the paper making studio. And so we have the different beaters for Asian papers and Western papers. And paper making has become, over the years, a very significant part of our program. That students, I think, especially graduate students, see paper making as a way to, first of all, kind of own their materials from the beginning, but also as a real approach to sculptural ways of working. And just, I think, a space with an incredible amount of innovation. And this shop also has bookbinding, and we have bookbinding classes too. So if you go about 10 minutes downtown, you get to our graduate center. And so this yellow brick building is called Fletcher Building. It's a building from the 1880s, and it houses graduate programs in painting, photography, printmaking, sculpture, glass, and some digital plus media. If you notice on the right there, there's that sort of grayish building. That's called CIT, Center for Integrated Technologies. And CIT has graduate programs in interior architecture, graphic design, textiles, industrial design, and digital plus media. And it also houses a grad student gallery. And I think this has been a very important thing. We moved into Fletcher 20 years ago, and it's really been a kind of hub and a real kind of graduate community. So that even though all the graduate students aren't there, the vast majority of the graduate students are there, and it does promote, I think, a really powerful interaction. Here's the entrance to Fletcher, and then to the left you can see CoWorks, and that's a kind of maker's lab that's open to all RISD students, but it's right there for the graduate students. And there's kinds of fabrication that can be done there and a lot of experimentation. And then when you go upstairs, you'll see that this is what a hallway in Fletcher looks like. And Fletcher was actually designed as a kind of shop. So where you see those sort of blank white windows, those were shop windows that you went through as you went to the various floors. And I have a little floor plan here that shows studios on the 5th floor of Fletcher. And it gives you some idea about what our studios are like. So this quad here is actually where our first year students usually are. So each one is about 600 square feet, and the students have access through here. And I think it is really very much a kind of community space, a communal space in some ways. Everybody has a private area to work, but I also think it's a place where the cohorts kind of meet and get to know each other. This year, because of social distancing, we actually, the first year students have 2 bays in these quads. So they're very lucky this year to actually have much more space to work than they ordinarily would. The studio here is a typical second year studio. And so that's probably about 800 square feet, maybe a little bit bigger. which is a private closed-door studio. And so this year we have a student here, and we have students in 505 and 504. The rest of this floor is sculpture and glass. So we are integrated with other programs in the same way. This picture shows our crit room. So the room that we can use for meetings, and then for putting up work, and for having our midterms and finals. And then this is a picture that Wei Wang just sent me of his studio. So this is a typical kind of first year studio. And we provide the tables and the flat files, really try to help people to outfit them as well as possible. And then this picture is a second year studio. So this is Breslin Bell's studio right when she was moving in. And you can see that it's a really kind of wonderful sort of consolidated space. In CIT in the basement, there is a wood shop, and students can train to use the wood shop and use it as much as they need to. And on the same floor, we also have a print shop. So that's one of our students, Wei. He was exposing a cyanotype, so I didn't want to turn on the bright lights. We left the yellow lights on. And we share this with textiles. So textiles has that yardage table in the foreground. And we have in this shop everything you would need for screen printing, plus an additioning studio for litho and etching. So it's a place where grads can have time away from the crowded shops and really do printing, working here, sign out time, really have longer blocks of time. It's available 24 hours a day. It's air conditioned in the summer. And so Benson Hall usually closes around 11 o'clock. So this is really a place, I think it's especially for the grads. The grads maintain it, request the supplies, and do all that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it for facilities. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I just wanted to say a few words, and as Molly's listening, about admissions, because I just wanted to say some stuff about what our process is and what we're looking for, and even just sort of thinking about your applications.
That was great.
So we usually get about 40 applications, maybe 50 applications for about 5 spaces. And I would say if I had to characterize the applications, I would say that they're really high quality, that as we look at them, we really see young artists who are really ready to take the step. And I'm very excited about that. And so we look at them closely. We get access to the applications in January. All the faculty spend time reading them and looking at them closely. And then we actually show them to the graduate students who also vote on the applications. So the faculty and grads vote and really, I think, have a stake in who is the sort of next cohort. Mm-hmm. Just a few words of advice. One thing that Slide Room gives you is a chance to write a little bit about each one of the works that we see. Mm-hmm. And I would say it's very important when you're putting that slide there to ask yourself, what would you want to say to somebody if you actually could be in the room while they were looking at the work? Mm-hmm. There's something that really makes that work come to life. And it can be very, very helpful to help us to comprehend what we're looking at. We really read the essays very carefully and enjoy them. And I think there's something that the essays really give a lot of insight into a person and where they're at. And oftentimes I find people waste a lot of time on essays saying, oh, RISD's so great, I really want to be there because it's so great. You don't have to do that. You want the essay to really tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, what your motivations for making work are. And I think we also really want to know why you might want to be in a printmaking program. Why is this program, especially, it's not so much the program, it's printmaking itself. Like, why does that curriculum appeal to you? Mm. Those things are really important points to touch on. When you put your CV in, you should go ahead and be detailed. Most of our applicants are young, but they have life experience. And whatever you've done for work, whatever kind of volunteer work you've done, whatever kind of educational experiences you have, those really feed who you are. And so it's really important that that's really extensive. And definitely when you're choosing your recommenders, make sure that there are people who, there's at least one person who can speak significantly about your educational experience and you in the educational environment. And if you do have a supervisor that you want to do a reference, want that person to do a reference, make sure that person can address a little bit about you as an artist. Because that's what we are trying to get, a fuller picture of you as an artist. Once we're done with the application cycle, we will try to contact our first list as soon as possible. We do have to be kind of careful not to, just to keep our numbers where they need to be. But we will be in touch, and that's the time when we're really ready to start a conversation. So many schools do interviews. For me, once you're accepted in RISD printmaking, it's really time for us to kind of have a meeting of minds and sort of interview each other, because it's time for then you to think about if you can accept us and if we're the right place for you to have this once in a lifetime learning experience. One thing I always say is that education is invariably painful because you're examining all your values and sort of taking things apart and putting them back together. But I don't think education needs to be adversarial. And I think that you can have a deep educational experience in a supportive environment. And I really want that supportive environment to start during the admissions process. And I think that, whatever stage you're at with it, I hope that you can look at us as advisors because, if everything works out, we'll be your future teachers.
Yeah. I often say that it's a two-way street, Andrew.
It is.
So thank you for backing me up there. If you're ready, we have a question that we're going to allow someone to talk out loud. I believe this is Jacqueline. So I'll ask you to unmute so you can ask your question aloud to us.
Awesome, thank you. So I've attended a few info sessions like across RISD, and my impression is that you folks are very materials and making focused. As someone who, my work is very theory driven, and I appreciated the example of the student you shared whose work was also very research driven as well. But how would you say, is like the environment for students like that who, are making work, but who are also doing a lot of research and writing, and, how for people whose work kind of exists like at that intersection of, creating and academia?
Well, that's obviously a very important category in the art of today. And I do think when we think about our cohort, we want to put together a cohort that shows many different points of view. The making part is always going to be really strong at RISD. That's for sure. And it's and I hope that anybody who comes to us really is eager to be in the shops. And I think also, eager to engage with the objects. But I really feel there is quite a bit of support through our own graduate seminars, through faculty members in liberal arts and at Brown for really finding that kind of support. So we have a first year student who studied classics at Wheaton College, and now she's in a seminar in the classics department at Brown, and she's really, I think, developing her community there. We have another student who, really is being rather transformed by a queer theory course at Brown. So I really support that as well. But I do hope for all of our students to really engage with that. Obviously the making and those, the potential for all of that in so many ways. I do think the museum is also a place that brings quite a bit together. So the museum has really great internships for students. So both in the print, drawing and photographs, and in contemporary art. And I think those are ways to really, bridge between objects and theory and art history. that our students have really found to be very beneficial too.
We were just on a session with Brooks Hagen, the Dean of Fine Arts, just before this, Andrew. And one of the things that he had mentioned was that we're very much looking at the meeting points of theory and practice. Not to say, you know, making is what we do at RISD, and I think we do it very well. But I think just even with the addition of our new research programs, right, we're heading in this direction of research and contemporary art, finding this meeting place. So I don't think it has to be one or the other is my point. And that, you know, we're inviting a lot of students from a lot of different backgrounds into this, as you mentioned, from the classics. We've had students from theater backgrounds coming into industrial design. I mean, it goes across the board. So.
Well, another thing is that over the summer, I think students really expressed a great desire for cultural change at RISD in many ways. Mm-hmm. And that has to do with social equity, it has to do with anti-racism, but I also think it had to do with the curriculum too. And one thing I did with my colleague Meg Foster is we really gave over 5 weeks of our program to grads, to the second year grads, and each one of them had a day in which they would lead us through a reading and direct a discussion, and use that time also to reflect on their own work. We did that instead of midterms. Mm. And you know, we spent a day really talking about colonialism. We spent a day talking about queer theory. We spent a day talking about racism in you know, second generation feminism. We spent a day talking about you know, authors who deal with the environment, and it's been an absolutely good thing. And I think you know, one thing I feel that I can do to change is really have students direct more of the content as we move forward.
Absolutely. We do have someone else with their hand raised, so I think we'll do that. I believe it's Jasmine.
Hello.
Hello.
So what kind of like safety COVID precautions do you have in place, and like what will the grad program look like if you guys go online, and like how will that education like differ, I guess, versus going online versus being in person?
So we worked really hard this summer to make sure that we could be in person, that that students could use their studios and the shops. And so what has happened is there are designated work areas and places where people can't work in the same space. All of our rooms have very specified numbers of students who can be in there. Many of the classrooms have 4 refrigerator-sized HEPA filters in them. Everybody on campus is always in masks, and we get tested once a week. So we've made it to week 9. We've also changed certain things though. For instance, I'm not doing any group critiques. So we're taking advantage of the fact that we can meet one-on-one in a big room with the windows open and look at the actual work. But when it comes time to do a critique, we put up the work like a show. We have a schedule where we take time to look at the work and take notes, and then we meet online to have the group discussion. So I think we're really trying to avoid big crowds, but we're really trying to appreciate the chance to actually be together and to see each other's work. Mm-hmm. I think the only thing that would cause us to close down is if the governor of Rhode Island had a complete shutdown. Mm-hmm. And if that were to happen, we would use a platform like Arena to look at work, and as we did in the spring, and we would continue to have our meetings and really develop a robust discussion. But I do think we all feel that it's not quite the same. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the springtime too was just a learning process for all of us, both on your end and the faculty, the students. It was quite jarring. It happened very, very quickly that we had to go online. And so the administration, of course, I think, you know, everybody could have done better, but the thing that I think that they did really well was addressing students' needs for material kits to be sent abroad, for students to have, what was it, Jen? I don't know. We had like paid for travel for some students who needed to get home immediately. And we also kept, I think, almost 150 students on campus. We're able to give them housing if they didn't have anywhere to go. So, you know, I think that we look at this through the lens of safety being number one, but also the second aim would be to not take away any of our educational outcomes. Definitely we've learned a lot from the spring, I would say, on the admissions and the administrative side of things, on how best to support faculty and students better, if that were the case. And actually, Jen just put a wonderful link in the chat. If you ever want to know what's going to happen with RISD right now, we're taking it one semester at a time. But if you want to know what's going to be happening in the future, you can always go to the RISD by COVID site to see a whole testing dashboard. You can see the learning outcomes and sort of different things that we're doing. Right now, we're actually called hybrid because most of our programs are hybrid. But again, you can follow that link and see how things change in the future. All right, what else we got for questions here, Jen?
Yep. So we have a few questions that came in through the Q&A section in Zoom. And this is just another admission portfolio question. This person wants to know what range of work is best for printmaking MFA portfolio?
I think a better way to frame that question is should there be a range of work, or should it be more concise and pointed, right? To one. I feel like that might be what they're getting at, but.
Well, you have the potential to show up to 20 images, and I hope that you take advantage of that for the most part. And I would say that, you think about that sequence of 20 images, you'd want to put your first 10, it would be the work that you're really excited about right now. And I think people come to a program and they have that work that maybe they've been working a job for a couple of years and they haven't been able to do that much, but they know what they want to do next. And I would say those first 10 images should sort of reflect that thing that you want to do next.
Yes.
And then I think it's great to see variety too, and maybe in those last 10 images. So oftentimes, if somebody includes a video, it's an incredible, it gives us incredible insight into that person's work and ideas about the work. Or if somebody who's applying for printmaking shows some ceramics or some sculptural work that is important to you, I think that gives us some insight into the idea that how 3D might be part of your work. Or and then I think also if you have done some community work, or you've worked with kids, or you have a project that's not totally your own but you're still proud of it, show that. That's a really significant thing. If you've done some educational things as an artist, that or done some volunteer work or something, that why not show 2 slides of that? It really sort of gives us a more complete picture.
And Andrew, how do you feel about works in progress? We get that question quite a lot, since you are talking about like, okay, I didn't have time. And especially now I see in portfolio review sessions, people just aren't making what they want to make. They're making what they can make, right? Because they're limited by size or by scale, by economic issues, whatever it may be. What would you advise them to do?
I think if you have something that you're excited about and you're working on it, show it and then really annotate it in the note.
Right, make sure it has context. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And when we look at the thesis show, all those students had plans for much more giant projects. Right. And they were very adaptable. And I didn't feel the loss looking at that work. I felt that it was really strong. And so we are in a different time and we have to acknowledge that. And that's part of it. So I think that's
absolutely. What else, Jen? What else we got there?
Yeah. And the next question is how often do grad students get the opportunity to exhibit their work?
We have departmental, a printmaking biennial for grads, and we have a triennial for the entire department. So usually people have two big on-campus things. But then I think the most important experience are the grad and the student curated shows that happen at Gelman, so that students can actually, in pairs, propose to curate an exhibition. It's an amazing experience. You have a theme, you send out the prospectus, there's a call for entries, you do a ton of studio visits, you select the work, people drop it off, and then our unbelievably fantastic installation team makes it look like it belongs in a museum. And I think that those are really great opportunities to exhibit work. More specifically in printmaking, we've participated in Print Fest during Print Week in New York. And I think one thing some grad groups have the desire to do, and I know our group this year does, is to try to really have a postgraduate exhibition for the graduating class somewhere outside of Providence or even within Providence, but to have something that really sort of raises that. So those are all possibilities. And our grads do exhibit a lot at the International Print Center, New York, in various group shows, at Southern Graphics and those types of things too. There's more kind of print venues, Boston Printmakers. So we have those kinds of venues that happen for our students.
Almost about a little less than 10 minutes left. Are there any other questions that you want to shout out? We're happy to do so. Otherwise, we do have a couple questions about teaching, Andrew. And the question is, are they only going to be teaching as a TA, or is there a circumstance where they would be teaching their own course as a grad student?
Well, I'm glad that came up because I was thinking of it myself. A graduate participation in our teaching mission is really important. And we really understand that many students who come to our program do want to pursue full-time teaching and gain experience. And there's a good deal of support for that. So all of our students are awarded assistantships, which is money that is paid for your work as a TA. And so you're a TA starting your first semester, and you work with me to sort of create a kind of palette of experiences as a TA. So you have 3 TA experiences, fall, spring, and the following fall. And then all of our students are invited to teach their own winter session course, to be instructor of record. And that's a great experience. In fact, the 5 current second-year grads are all teaching this winter session, and they've devised rather amazing online courses that they're going to be teaching. So I think that's a great experience. And then the other thing that's really important to know is that there's real support for our TAs and teachers through the Department of Teaching and Learning. So there's a teaching certificate program, and there's a real support to learn more about reflective teaching, to develop your application portfolio as a teacher. And those are things that I think are end up giving our students a lot of confidence. And I've been really excited to see over the last 20 years how many of our students have, in a very, very, very difficult job market, found great jobs. And I think it's because people know they know how to do stuff and they can run a shop, but they also have thought deeply about art and contemporary art and really have something to bring to the table there.
Yeah, and Jen put in the chat just the link to those different opportunities, like the collegiate teaching certificate. And also, I just want to shout out to our Career Center. They are absolutely incredible with, you want to do a mock interview, because it's no joke that this is a very hard job market to get into. And sometimes it takes many years of adjunct teaching just to get the right experience or find the right opportunity. So our Career Center, once you get that opportunity to practice an interview, redo your CV, those are always really helpful tools as you move forward in your career, if teaching is what you want to do. But certainly there's a lot of opportunity here at RISD too.
The other thing that's been really exciting for me is to see a lot of the entrepreneurial ways that our alums work, and sort of developing businesses and collaborating print shops, which are different from how they used to be. It's a place where the artist helps other artists, but also features his or her own work. And I was so excited to see this new book by Phil Saunders, Prints and Their Makers. And you just go through it and there's so many RISD names and faces in it, of people who are really participating in that kind of larger print world. And that's something I'm also very excited about and glad to see people doing.
And I'll get you a little Amazon link to that book right now. How do you like that? It's a long one. Well, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A tab. Anybody has any other last minute questions they want to shout out? Otherwise, it's past my bedtime.
You can feel free to email me with questions, and
Okay.
I definitely want to be a resource to anybody who's interested in applying.
I'll go ahead and I will put Andrew, your email address in the chat. And then of course, email us in admissions if you have any of those questions, like how do I connect with XYZ department or office? We're always here as a resource for you guys as well. And again, sign up for other sessions if you're curious to hear about other departments and the difference, say, between this department and the painting department. You'll hear from Angela herself. So yeah, we hope to see you again soon. Thank you, Andrew, so much. This is really helpful.
Thank you.
Lots of comments about the images of the shop. So thank you so much for sharing those images with us. That was really great.
Good.
All right, everybody.
Good night.
Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Bye.